What is up, plain people? It's Tuesday, July 7th, 2020, and we're back with another episode of the Planthropology Podcast. This is Vikram Baliga, your host, and I'm thrilled to be with you again today. If you didn't know, I'm a massive tree nerd. I love trees. I could literally talk to you about trees all day. And don't test me on that because I will do it. But some of my friends just know better than to ask at all. So we're talking about trees today, and I've got a great guest, and I'm stoked about it. So excited. But first, a couple of things. So I announced on the last episode that I'm running a little contest for you to win some swag, stickers and mugs, and whatever else I can come up with between now and then. But I have a 1-star rating on iTunes that I don't know where it came from. I don't know why. He didn't leave it, or this person did not leave a review. So I want you to make one up. We're calling this Bad Rating Backstories. And your job is to come up with the most outlandish and ridiculous backstory and reason for this human leaving a 1-star rating without a review. Send those to me by the 20th of this month, and I'll include my favorite in the next episode, episode 22, that'll come out on the 21st, and I will send you some stuff. I don't even know what yet, but you're going to get some cool stuff. So do that, email it to me, send it to me on social media, whatever. Looking forward to hearing your ridiculous stories. And if nobody sends them in, I'm going to make up my own story and buy myself a mug. And I don't have any room in my cabinets for more mugs. So I need you to participate. Also, again, if you're waiting on a sticker from me, they are coming. I still have a stack of them that don't have stamps on them because I'm an idiot. And so I'm going to put stamps on them and get them mailed out. I'm finishing up my dissertation right now. I am planning on defending on the 29th of July, so I'm a little frazzled at the moment and behind on everything. So I apologize for the slowness of those getting to you. So as we've mentioned before, I'm not at the point right now where I'm taking traditional podcast sponsors because, we're supported by the university. It's kind of in some cases, a conflict of interest, and I just don't want to mess with it at the moment. But I have made a couple of really cool local partnerships, and I feel more okay about supporting local industry here in Lubbock because that is a big goal of Texas Tech. So there's a couple of local businesses and organizations that I've started partnering with through the podcast that I want to tell you about. So the first that we've talked about for a few weeks now is a cool business called Pecan Ridge. They do everything from local shelling of pecans. They sell them in the fall. They do cool gift baskets. But they also have a lot of things that you can buy regardless of where you are. You don't have to be a Lubbockite to enjoy signature flavored pecans or bacon bourbon barbecue sauce, which is super rad, by the way. It's so good. Pecan roasted coffee, jalapeno mustard, pickled asparagus, little pecan pies, all kinds of cool stuff. Hit up pecanridge.com. Use the promo code PLANTPeople, all one word, all lowercase, at checkout, and you'll get 10% off your order, and it'll be great. They'll ship it to your door at your home, and all you have to do is open it up and get stuff. It's great. The next organization that I have just started partnering with is a great one called Local LBK, so Local Lubbock. Now, this is maybe more for you Lubbockites or people in the region than maybe people that are out of town, but it's a great local advocacy group that works with businesses from restaurants to clothing stores to art and education groups and entertainment and everything and anything in between to help promote these local small businesses, which have taken such an incredible hit over the past few months with all the coronavirus stuff going on. Our local businesses are really struggling. And so I thought it would be great to partner with Local LBK to get the message out about all these wonderful wineries and coffee shops and movie theaters and everything else that you should be supporting. And wherever you live, if you're not a Lubbock person, go support a local business today. I think it's so important. But with Local LBK, for $5 a month, you get access to all kinds of great rewards. In some places, some of the favorites that I have are at some of these coffee shops in town: Sugar Brown's, Gold Stripe, the coffee shop, Barra Coffee and Pastry Shop, and Tova Coffee House. You know that I'm a coffee person. I drink a ton of coffee. You can get everything from a free beverage with a purchase of a coffee bag to 10% off your order, to buy one, get one 50% off deals with a membership through local LBK. You can get great discounts at all kinds of businesses, gimmies, giveaways, all kinds of great stuff. So it's $5 a month. Go to Keep It Local LBK to sign up, and I will post a link in the show notes and on social media, and I'll talk about this on social media too if you want to go sign up that way. Something cool they're really doing is $1 of every $5 subscription every month gets put directly back into the community for marketing, for development, and other things for all these businesses they work with. Their goal is to get 10,000 subscribers and invest $10,000 back per month into our local community. And I really want to help them get there because I love this place. I love these business owners, and it's just a great organization. So again, it's keepitlocallbk.com. I'll post links you can use to go sign up, and it's great. All right. So my guest for today is a good friend of mine that I met a while back when I was working with Extension, named Jon Motsinger. So he is a department head in the Texas A&M Forest Service down in the Hill Country now. He's based out of Austin just recently. I actually interviewed him, I think, on his last week here in Lubbock. I'm really going to miss this guy. But he is, if there's another tree nerd that loves trees as much as I do, or more than I do, it's Jon. And he's so knowledgeable, so funny, and just really the perfect person that I could have on to talk about trees. You're going to love this episode. I know you will. So thanks for joining me again. I hope you're hanging in there and doing well, but fasten your seatbelts and get ready for episode 21 of Planthropology with Jon Motsinger. All right. Well, we are up and running, and I'm here with Jon Motsinger from the Texas Forest Service. How are you, man?
You got to say Texas A&M Forest Service. We got to get that A&M in there.
Okay.
I know you work for tech. I know, I'm a big tech fan. I'm not an A&M guy, but Texas A&M Forest Service, you got to get it right.
Texas A&M. And you think I would be used to saying it after
you worked there,
after
right?
Several years in Extension.
Get it right, man.
Yeah. Okay. So Jon is with the Texas A&M Forest Service.
Thank you.
Here locally in West Texas. So I appreciate for first, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but congratulations on the new job.
Thank you.
So he'll still be with the Forest Service, but we'll go into that a little bit more. But how long have you been up here in the Lubbock area doing this?
So this year it'll be 11 years. This month it'll be 11 years since I've moved to Lubbock. So 11 years here in the Panhandle. It was actually in the middle of June, and the day that we drove into Lubbock, that night, we had a haboob.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was like, all right, welcome to Lubbock. Uh-huh. Here's a bunch of dirt for you.
Yeah, welcome. That is what we do to people.
and for some reason, I stayed here for 11 years in spite of all that.
You kind of get stuck, right? So it's like people come and visit in the spring, early spring or in the fall, and it's beautiful. And then we get them with summer.
Yeah.
Right. It's late spring, summer. We hit them with giant walls of dust and 115 degree temperatures.
But it's not all bad. Lubbock's good. I've enjoyed my time here, and actually I'm going to be a little bit sad to leave. We've been in the process of packing up our house and things like that. And when you think about leaving, and 11 years is a long time to be someplace. And so anyway, we're excited for the future, but kind of sad to be leaving too.
Oh, for sure. Well, yeah, no, and anywhere I think after 11 years kind of becomes home, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And your kids were born here and all that.
Yeah, or adopted here, in the case of mine. But so it'll be different. My wife's already saying that she's gonna try to get them to be UT fans. I'm like, nah, not going there.
No,
we've 11 years in Lubbock, we've got to stay tech fans.
And you work for A&M.
And I work for A&M, yeah. So I'm not going to, we won't go there. But
yeah, so for our Austin listeners, sorry, but not sorry.
Yeah, sorry, not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. So why don't you, I guess, just kind of introduce yourself a little more. How did you get into trees? What brought you to this place in your life?
Yeah, so, as with a lot of the guests that you've had, like it starts in childhood, started whenever I was a kid. And so I grew up in Missouri, which Missouri is a little bit different than Texas. Just a little. But I just grew up enjoying the outdoors. Like I'd go fishing. I lived out in the country a little bit. And so we had some property next to ours where we'd go exploring and all that kind of stuff. So I just enjoyed being outdoors. Whenever I got into high school, I started getting more involved in like the science aspect of things. And for FFA, I was on a couple of contests, judging teams. And my senior year, I ended up being on the forestry team just because they needed people. And I was like, all right, well, yeah, I can memorize the scientific name of trees. That's fine. I can knock that out. And so really enjoyed that. And that was kind of my first introduction into the field of forestry and what forestry was, just learning kind of the care of trees and things like that. Then I went to college, went to the University of Missouri. So I will always be a Tigers fan.
Yeah. Oh, sure. You should
no matter where in Texas I live, Mizzou all the way.
Yeah.
But as I started there, I started with a degree in fisheries and wildlife, just thinking, all right, I want to be outside. I want to do like outdoorsy stuff. And the way they had it set up is if you lived in the dorms, you could choose to live in a community with other natural resource majors, which was great. And so in my dorm on my floor, I had people that were parks and rec majors and forestry majors and things like that. And so as I became better friends with the forestry people and started doing forestry stuff and like forestry club and forestry conclave, like the chopping and the crosscut sawing competitions
cool.
and stuff like that. Not nearly as cool as the stuff on ESPN, but it was fun. And so I got more into that and just realized that forestry is kind of cool. I decided that was kind of where I wanted to go. Part of it from the research standpoint, like if you're doing fisheries and wildlife, you might trap a small mammal and tag it and never see it again, or a bird. If you put a tag in a tree and that tree's not there when you go back, there's other things going on. So really, that was kind of where I landed. Is all right. Let's focus on trees. And so I ended up actually getting my undergrad as a dual major in fisheries and wildlife and forestry. So I stuck with the fish and the animals, and then my master's was just in forestry. So that's kind of long story of how I got into trees.
Oh yeah. Well, and so what's interesting, I've always been into trees. Like I love trees. I'm a tree guy. And it's funny because I make the joke a lot that, Lubbock doesn't have trees, which is not the case. It's really not the case. In fact, a friend of mine who is the photographer for campus was taking some pictures from on top of one of the buildings last week or a couple weeks ago, sometime this spring. And like, she kind of posted about the same thing. Like, look at this canopy. Like,
it's just green. There's a lot of trees. And I mean, that's the question. And you can imagine being with the Texas A&M Forest Service and being in Lubbock. You pull up to a gas station and somebody reads the logo on the truck and gives you that quizzical look.
Right.
So where are the trees? But really, I mean, the urban forest is kind of where it's at. I mean, that's what we look at as far as trees, at least here in Lubbock. We've got a great urban forest. We're a Tree City USA recognized by the Arbor Day Foundation. And so just the value on those urban trees, that's what's important around here. And that's where we get our tree fix, I guess.
Yeah, right. Well, and it's interesting. Yeah, because, people think about, well, lots of other places when you think about trees.
Yeah.
Forests and of different kinds. And yeah, we don't have that, but we do have people, and people like having trees around.
Yeah.
And so I had you remember Mark Brown?
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. So he would always say that every tree in Lubbock was a choice.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And at least initially.
Somebody had to choose to plant that tree there because otherwise it's not going to be there.
No, right. And Episode 1's Kyle Tengler would probably argue with me about this. I always say that we don't have any native trees, right? The mesquite is okay, maybe.
We don't need to get into that
because hopefully he'll listen and I'll get a text, But no, that is an interesting thing because we're up here on this big open savanna, and then you get even flying in is interesting, right? Because it is cotton fields, agriculture, grassland, as far as you can see.
Yeah. And a few windbreaks in there. So
yeah,
don't forget the windbreak.
There are some windbreaks, and we'll talk about that in a minute, actually. And then you kind of fly in over Lubbock, which is, again, people think dry desert, but we have a lot of trees. And so working for the A&M Forest Service, what have been some of your responsibilities? Because like we mentioned, you just kind of got into a new position, but I'd like to hear over the past 11 years, what kind of stuff have you done?
Yeah. So being here as a forester in the High Plains, we are few and far between. So I cover a pretty large area, as you might imagine.
Yeah.
So I have covered an area basically from Plainview to Midland to Abilene, kind of, I don't know, 35, 40 some odd counties. And primarily working with landowners, people that are wanting to put in windbreaks around property, around farmland or a home or something like that. So that's part of it. Also working with people that just because once you get off the caprock a little bit, we do have some nice western soapberry forests and things like that when you get out toward past Crosbyton and Dickens and out that way. So I mean, we have some trees around here, and so people are wanting to know how to manage those. So working with folks from a stewardship standpoint, how to take care of those trees that they have on their property. And have kind of a healthy property for wildlife or whatever their objectives are.
Right.
But then there's also the urban component. So we have within this area, I mentioned the big cities, basically Lubbock, Midland, Odessa, Abilene. Those are large urban areas. And so we've got a lot of urban issues as well. So working with communities to care for their urban trees or to inventory their urban trees, working even with homeowners, giving them information and recommendations on tree planting, tree care, pruning, a lot of public outreach. So probably the way that you and I first worked together was on a couple workshops. Talking about trees and conservation and things like that. So it's kind of it's been a variety of things, and it's nice because it's not always the same thing every day. And then, of course, the office that I work out of is our West Texas nursery. And so that, I don't think I mentioned that yet, but it's the only nursery that's run by the A&M Forest Service. And we're growing trees for conservation, for wildlife, for windbreaks that can be planted in this part of the state. Like we want to focus on trees that do well in this area.
Sure, yeah.
But some of them do well in other parts of the state too. So, I mean, when you throw in the nursery stuff along with the public and landowners and communities, I mean, it's just a cornucopia
it's a lot.
Yeah.
And with your tree program, so I know you do a variety of species. I think one year I helped with so do you ship all over the country or just in the state of Texas?
No, so we ship all over the country, and I was actually looking through some of the lists of places where we've shipped before or had orders from, and so there's like California was on there, and Florida and Illinois, North Carolina. So most of what we grow, we sell in state.
Sure.
But we get a few random orders. We've gotten a couple from Hawaii. We have opted not to ship those.
Yeah.
A little bit unreasonable as far as the shipping rates to Hawaii. But
I believe, well, and when I think about some of the different species you grow, like probably the most common is the Elderica pine, or the Afghan pine.
Afghan, yeah.
Which does well in a variety of climates, a variety of soil types. It can take salty water. It can take heat. It's a great tree.
Yeah, it just doesn't like too much water, and that's right. That's the problem you get into as you get a little bit further east into Central Texas and definitely East Texas. Like, it's too wet here.
Yeah, but for our climate and really anything west, it does great.
Yeah,
and then some hardwoods, some oaks, and some other stuff.
Yeah, oaks, pecan. I mean, native Texas pecan, things like that.
And that's so we talk about native trees to this area and like things like pecans maybe not native here but to the state,
right?
But then black walnut and several others. We have quite a few trees in Texas. Texas is big, and I've mentioned this on other episodes, but it's like we actually have quite a few international listeners, and I think it's hard to contextualize sometimes how large Texas can be.
Well, you can put it in terms of miles, But not everybody really grasps that. You can put it in terms of drive time. I mean, that's a Texas thing, right? Like, like how long, I don't care how many miles, how long is it going to take me? But if we've got speed limits of like 80 miles an hour, drive time doesn't really equate either. And so it's crazy big.
It's like the size of Western Europe, pretty much. Like if you were to take the distance from like the southern tip of Texas to the northern panhandle and like fold it again, you could be in Canada, you could be in South America, you could be in a lot of places. So I guess my point there, not just to brag on how big, which is what we do in Texas.
Of course.
So if you're listening out there and you don't know a lot of Texans, if you spend any time with Texans, we will at some point tell you how great Texas is in one way or the other. It's in the contract.
That may be where I fail as a Texan because I'm still a Missourian at heart. But Texas is okay. We'll go with that.
It's okay. The stamp of approval. But
that should be the new slogan.
Texas is just
we're okay.
We're okay. That's that's funny. But it is a diverse ecosystem, right?
And there are so many. I mean, you go from the piney woods of East Texas, you get into the hill country and the live oaks, and you get into the post oak savanna, kind of North Texas. You've got the Lost Pines there in the Bastrop area. Then you get all the way out west to the Davis Mountains, and I mean, there are so many unique species. Just kind of some that are just only found in small pockets in Texas. Yeah. Like it's really cool. And so much diversity of species and ecoregions and types and things like that.
Well, and this is a little bit off topic, but it's interesting. So I don't care. I don't think anyone cares, but even up here on the high plains, we used to be heavily spring fed by underground springs from the aquifer. We have a huge aquifer system here, and then if you get down, you've probably been out to Silver Falls. So there's a rest stop about an hour east of here, that's just off the side of the highway, but it's actually a spring fed area. There's a river system that eventually ends up in the Brazos and then into the Gulf of Mexico, eventually. But there's so much biodiversity there that it's incredible. It's incredible. There's hawthorns, there's native grapes, there are some terrestrial orchids that are endemic to just that little spot. It's wild.
Yeah. I mean, you never know what you're going to run across. I mean, there are just so many like hidden little pockets like that in different places that, it's really cool.
So you mentioned, so talk a little bit now about the job that you're going to do, because you're about to, like, you're in the process of packing up and leaving Lubbock. I'm glad I caught you.
I know, right? I'm in the process. We are fixing to be out of here. But so in Central Texas, I will be functioning as department head over the Central Texas operation. So this is going to be our foresters in kind of Central and West Texas. And a lot of what they focus on is oak wilt, which is a fairly devastating disease. If you're not familiar with it, we've got a lot of materials and things like that. And I think you've heard my oak wilt presentation at least once.
Oh, it's good. Yeah.
And I could probably go on and on about that, but basically working with landowners and working with communities that have oak wilt to treat that, to mitigate that, to kind of help keep it from spreading, and then a lot of public awareness and just getting information out about not pruning your trees between February 1st and the end of June, making sure that you paint all of your pruning cuts on oak trees at any time of year, and just kind of fostering that kind of awareness and getting that information out to the public where folks can use it.
Well, and that brings up a really interesting topic for me, especially in light of all the coronavirus stuff we've been dealing with, right? So we talk about human pandemics and epidemics and disease issues a lot, right? Because it's in the news and it directly impacts let's say it this way, it impacts our health in a direct way. Okay. Right. The loss of trees, which we can talk about too, because you brought that up before, and I wanted to hear you talk about that. Can impact our health in a positive way. So their loss is a negative. But like plant diseases are kind of a big deal.
Yeah, especially widespread ones, and one. I mean, there's not really a cure for a plant disease that is spread by an insect, and to any open wound on an oak tree, basically.
Yeah.
Where it can colonize and then lead to the death of the tree. So it's something where I don't think, it's interesting. I was listening to a web call recently, of course, that was talking about the history of oak wilt. And I mean, oak wilt's been in Texas for years. I mean, decades, like since the 40s maybe was when it was first potentially recognized, and in the 60s was whenever it was actually identified. And so it's been around for a long time.
Sure.
But it becomes more obvious in Central Texas, where there's a lot of the same trees. So there's a lot of live oak. And then as people are kind of getting more, interacting more with the environment. So as communities, as Austin is growing and these small communities around Austin are growing, and people are moving there because of the trees. As those trees start to die, it has a really a noticeable impact.
Yeah.
And so people are really tied to the trees, and so seeing them all just die is pretty devastating.
Oh yeah. Well, and you make an interesting point about as people kind of interact with the environment or become, more invested in parts of the environment, because it's one that they're noticing that millions of oaks are crashing. It'll kill a red oak in, if you're not familiar, it'll kill a red oak in months.
Yeah.
Live oak may limp along for a couple years.
Yeah, but usually, within a year here.
Bur oaks, and I think some in the white oak family may have a little resistance.
Yeah, less susceptible is what we say.
Okay.
But they can still. I know we've seen it a little bit in chinkapin oak and maybe some Mexican white oak. That it's not as prevalent in those. I mean, any of the red oaks and the live oaks are where you see the majority of it. And yeah, seeing those trees just up and die.
It's tough.
It's crazy.
Well, and then you think about also how something like that spreads, because as people build homes, you want an oak tree, so it gets dug up from the hill country somewhere, and we have a lot of it in Lubbock. It's in all these centers around here.
Yeah, and a lot of that's from firewood. So
oh wow, that's interesting.
So you get somebody that maybe has some property in the hill country, or where they go there on vacation or something, and cut up a dead tree and bring it back, and unwittingly transport the spores or something that's going to infect trees here. And so that's how a lot of these diseases spread. Another one, an insect that's getting a lot of attention now, is emerald ash borer. And that's it's interesting because you see where it has been found. Sometimes it'll be hundreds of miles away from the closest known center. And a lot of times it's following the interstate. So somebody has loaded up with firewood somewhere that was infected, moved it, and unwittingly transported either a disease or an insect. And so that's a big initiative from the nationally, is don't move firewood. Burn it where you buy it.
Yeah.
And it's hard because we all want. You want some cheap firewood to throw in the grill in the backyard, right? So
right.
Why not just grab some while I'm on vacation and bring it back with me? But that's how a lot of these diseases tend to spread.
Well, so fascinating from just an economic standpoint. Your trees are valuable.
Oh yeah,
they're valuable in situ. But then if you've got land, all your trees die. It's I at least want to get something out of it. Yeah. Right. So it's. I understand that can cause massive problems, but you kind of get people's thought process there of I'm gonna at least make something out of this. But no, but that's where education is important.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a big part of the mission of A&M in general, and all of the Forest Service and Extension Services and all that, is to make sure information gets where it needs to go.
Yeah. Education and service. Those are kind of our big things, at least when it comes to trees. So educating people, getting information out to them, and then working with them to meet the goals that they have, or to solve the problems that they have, issues that they're facing with tree disease and things like that.
Well, so you mentioned something again before we alluded to this just a minute ago, but you mentioned something before we started about some stuff you'd been reading and listening to about the effect of trees on human health.
Yeah.
So would you talk about that a little bit? Because I think that's fascinating.
Yeah. So there is a lot of research that has been done just on the benefits that trees provide. Now, we all know about benefits like clean air, and they provide oxygen, and they intercept rainfall and hold the soil and prevent erosion and things like that.
Yeah.
But some of the other effects that maybe aren't as widely known are things like aiding in recovery times for like people that are in a hospital recovering from illness or recovering from surgery. If they're even just in a room where they can see trees, the recovery time is shortened, and they recover faster. Or neighborhoods where there is more green space, more trees, birth weights of babies are higher. Incidents of like heart disease and things like that are lower. The amount of stress is lower, and there are numerous studies on this. So one of the initiatives that we've been really focusing on, not just in Texas but throughout the southern states, it's kind of a regional initiative, is Healthy Trees, Healthy Lives. And there's just trying to get that information out there about all the benefits of trees and how trees affect our health. And I mean, health is a big thing. I mean,
Yeah.
if you don't have your health, what do you have, right?
Right.
So getting that information out and kind of letting people know and trying to find ways to engage them, and hopefully through that encourage more trees to be planted, more people to take time to be outdoors or to be around trees, and partnering with the health community as well. So I know that there are maybe a couple of places where physicians are writing prescriptions for spending time around trees. I mean, that's their prescription, to get outside and to be around nature and around trees, and things like walk with a doc, where your doctor appointment is outside around trees, physical activity. And so, I mean, I think even just being around trees kind of spurs activity and spurs like if you're around trees, you want to get outside and do stuff. If there's no trees and it's hot, like today is fairly hot. And,
it's hot.
You don't want to be outside. You don't want to do anything. But if you can be around trees, I don't know. For me, like, I feel invigorated.
So, okay. So we were talking earlier about the tree canopy in Lubbock, and it's probably largely oak, I would think.
There's a good variety, though. I think there are a lot of trees that do really well here too, and so we've put together a kind of a resource of basically trees that are good for Lubbock. So worked with solid waste and the city of Lubbock and Lubbock Water to put together kind of a resource for folks that they can have a list of trees that, all right, these are the trees that are going to do better in this area than others. So things that are water smart, and that can actually survive our hot and dry climate. Yeah. And the what happens here every summer, as opposed to, I see a few maples around, and maples really don't like Lubbock.
No, they don't.
They just,
my parents had a sugar maple in their backyard for years, and it got to be a fairly large tree, but not as large as it should have been, and like in a place where it wanted to grow.
Yes.
And, it would come out and it'd be beautiful in May, this time of year, May, June. And I think we would always be like, this is the year. This is it. This is This is the year that we're going to get fall color. And then about mid-July, it would just like scream and die.
It's like brown. All the leaves fall off.
All the leaves fall off. Yeah. It would just burst into flame pretty much. So not every tree is well suited. Magnolias don't really like it here very much.
Yeah. But there are some really good trees. And you know this, but here on the Texas Tech campus is the state champion honey locust tree.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, who would have thought we'd have a state champion? We also have the co-champion desert willow is here in Lubbock as well. So we can get some fairly large trees here, and there are some trees that do really well. And if you want to know more about big trees. We have the whole big tree registry, and all that information is on our website, a story map, and everything that goes along with it is pretty cool.
So that's perfect, because actually that's the thing that I wrote down earlier about something I wanted to bring up was this big tree registry.
Yeah.
Until a couple of years ago when you told me about it, I think I don't remember when, I had no idea that was a thing.
Oh yeah.
Right. And then I started looking at the list. I'm like, this is fascinating.
It's super cool. And I know people that will actually take trips. I mean, some of these trees are on public property and some of them are on private property. Obviously, you're not going to go see them, but there are hopefully.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, but there are a number that are on public property, and so people will plan trips around just going to see big trees and just to see what that's like. And now some of them, I mean, depending on the species, the largest of the species may not be that big of a tree, but we do have some really, I mean, we have some national champion trees. So trees are rated. That's not the right word. Like registered, whatever. Okay. Nationally, there is a list of trees, and so there are Texas trees that are on that national list.
Well, in the honey locust that you're talking about is like just right out in the courtyard in front of our administration building on campus, and it's a gorgeous tree.
Oh yeah.
And I'd walked, I think before you told me that, I'd walked under it dozens of times.
Yeah, you don't really think about it. It doesn't stand out as being a big tree. I mean, you think about trees like the Goose Island oak or something that I mean, take like 4 people or 8 people to wrap their arms around. I mean, things like that are massive. Or you think about big trees like the giant sequoias and stuff. Like that's a big tree.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, a big honey locust. It's still pretty big. It's not.
It's just not. You wouldn't just be like, oh my gosh.
It's not like in your face big. It's just like subtly big.
But that gives people, I think, such an interest. So a question I get a lot. I say that a question that has come up before is like, I want to get into, and it sounds weird, right? But I want to get into nature. Like I want to be excited about going out and doing stuff.
Yeah.
I want to, and some people that's just not their thing, right? Like, but I think things like this big tree registry and just little things that we can do as, government agencies and educators to make nature exciting.
Oh yeah.
Which I think it's exciting in and of itself.
Yeah.
But if you make a game out of it, people will do it, right? Like, like you were saying, go plan a trip, go see the, I don't know, top 10 champion trees in Texas or something. So I think that's a good way to just get people interested, and I think it's great with kids too.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, that's one of the big things is as a state agency, what we do is education and working with conservation education in our schools and with children, because getting them excited and engaged from a young age, they're going to maintain that as they continue to grow into voting adults.
And that's super important, right? And that's something we don't maybe talk about enough is we talk a lot about teaching kids about nature because they need it. And again, in and of itself, it's important. But we talk about, okay, they need to know where their food comes from, X, Y, and Z. They need to know about these trees. But you make a great point that they will be deciding the policy of the next 30, 50 years based on the things we're teaching them today. And so focusing on the environment, focusing on some common things like that are good for everybody is maybe a great educational tool right now.
For sure. And one of the things that we as an agency are working on, and we've got an amazing education coordinator that works out of our headquarters in College Station. Shout out to JC. So one of the things that we've been working on is a forest literacy program where we have the tools that we can equip educators with even to promote this forest literacy and an understanding of our forests in general and where our forest products come from and even what constitutes a forest product and how we utilize those on a daily basis. And so, I mean, that's kind of, trying to find ways to reach people and also doing it in a way that meets the goals and the TEKs and things that educators have as well.
Well, and those things are important, right? Because there's stuff that the kids have to learn and there's stuff that they have to do. But gosh, when we think about, and I think it's so important that we keep looking at addressing some of these issues as long-term goals.
Yeah.
Right. From whether it be deforestation or climate change or water resource issues and kind of everything and anything in between, food supply.
Yeah.
There's such I think a tendency in our culture today to be like, no, we have to fix it now. We need to go do a thing now. And we're very reactive,
right?
Which has its purpose, which I think, we've seen in the last few weeks with just some of the stuff going on. But we've got to be thinking about, okay, how do we adequately prepare the next generation?
Yeah, we got to have the long term in mind. I mean, we got to be looking ahead and all right, like, we can do stuff now, but how is that gonna change? Like all right, whatever policies we implement and institute right now, that affects things now. But how do we look ahead and what is coming up and being forward thinking and then educating so that the people that are making those decisions will have the tools that they need in order to make those.
Right. I mean, yeah, you put a Band-Aid on, you take an aspirin, but at some point you've got to get into the systemic issues that are and I think, again, I harp on this a lot because I'm an educator, but I think we do that through education.
Yeah, for sure.
We can't expect people to act on things they don't know and they don't understand. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. If you don't understand it, you just ignore it or overlook it. And so, yeah, once you have that knowledge of here's the issue, here's what is causing the issue, and here's what we can do short-term and long-term to address it, then they're more likely and more willing to act.
Okay. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's great. That's my mind's just kind of spinning now, but no, that's really great. So those were most of my questions that I'd come in planned with, but I just thought of another one. And I've got a couple more, but I've just thought of another one. So what is your favorite tree?
Oh, so I mean, it is a good question. There are a lot of trees, and I guess I've probably never met a tree that I didn't love.
Sure.
Well, I take that back.
Bradford pear.
Bradford pear. Yeah. There are a few thorny trees that I've had run-ins with.
Oh yeah.
But probably my all-time favorite tree is Liriodendron tulipifera. The tulip poplar.
That's a good word.
Yeah, I know. I had to throw my knowledge of Latin tree names in there. But yeah, the tulip poplar, you can find them in East Texas and a lot along the East Coast. And they just have the name tulip poplar. They have a flower that looks like a tulip.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's pretty amazing flower. The leaf shape is really unique. As far as leaf shapes go. I mean, sure, all leaf shapes are unique, but
sure.
But it's interesting, and I mean, it makes some good lumber. I don't know. I've just always liked the tree, and of course the Latin name. So so tulip poplar is my choice of favorite tree.
Good choice.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite tree?
Mine is the bristlecone pine.
Oh, nice.
Yes. I've actually never gotten to see one in person. That's on my list.
Bucket list, yeah. Tree bucket list.
Go to. I guess they're in Yellowstone and other places in California and Nevada.
And super old trees.
Trees,
and they don't look it.
No, because they're not very big.
Yeah. They don't look a day over a couple hundred.
But they'll live, thousands of years. That they're literally the ancients of this world, the oldest living single organisms that we know of. But those have always been my favorites. I think they're cool looking. I love the twisting bark patterns.
Oh yeah.
The fact that they'll have one little branch that's alive. The rest of it looks like a fossil or something.
Yeah. Really neat trees.
But I also like them. And here's something I kind of wanted to discuss. I like and I talked to, I've got another podcast that's just started. Of course I do.
Like you do.
Yeah. I can't say no to stuff. But a friend of mine asked me to be on this podcast called Jolly Green Scientists. And I think the episode where we talk about the bristlecone pine probably just came out a couple weeks ago. At this, I'm trying to think because it's funny recording podcasts because it's not live, and I'm trying to think of okay, this is coming out on this day, and so I think that's already out. But the amount of biological history and geological history we can learn from something that old is incredible.
Yeah, and there's a whole section of forestry science called dendrochronology. I don't know if you're familiar with.
I've heard the term. Yeah.
So basically, like tracking history through trees and through tree rings. And I know there was a grad student when I was in school that his project was like. Now this sounds like a really terrible project, right? So his project was canoeing down rivers and finding sunken logs that had maybe like been underwater for who knows how long, and then like come back to the surface, and taking core samples of them, and then using that to do dendrochronology. So I mean, how terrible does that sound? To just like canoe down a river.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I was a little bit jealous of that project.
Of that.
So yeah, especially with your PhD, you didn't get anything cool like that.
I watched grass grow.
Yeah, right.
I literally watched grass grow.
You could have been in a canoe.
I could have been in a canoe. Yeah, that's fascinating. That sounds fun, actually.
I know, yeah.
But just the amount of exactly like the amount you can tell from the growth pattern of a tree, the way it lays in wood, like you can tell the prevailing wind direction, what were dry years, what were wet years,
when did fire come through, things like that.
And so and I think that's a reason to preserve. There's a lot of reasons. Okay, there's hundreds or thousands of reasons to preserve old growth forests and preserve nature. Mm-hmm. As natural as any nature is anymore, because we've touched everything at this point.
Right. Well, and there's a balance. I mean, you say natural. Well, what is natural and how far back? I think you talked about this with Kyle. Like, how far back do you go?
Yeah,
and things like that. And so there's definitely. I mean, there's a place for preservation and conservation, but I mean, there's also a place for utilization. And so, I mean, finding that balance between here's what we need to preserve and protect, and in what stage do we need to try to preserve and protect it, or do we let it continue to change as climatic patterns dictate?
Sure.
So where do we maintain that? And then what do we utilize, and how do we make the best use of the resources? Because it is a renewable natural resource, forests are, which is great.
Yeah.
So how do we utilize and make the best use of that? So.
No, that's great. And there's an episode of another podcast called Ologies that I listened to. Mm-hmm. And one of the early episodes, which actually kind of really got me into doing some of this, was an interview with a guy named Casey Clapp, who lives in the Pacific Northwest. Mm-hmm. He's an arborist up there. But he talked about the timber industry and how, he says in that the timber industry can absolutely save the world, if we start using our renewable resources wisely, if we're not mining for things, if we use wood in our construction wisely. Mm-hmm. I think that's fascinating. And
there's a lot of work that's being done now, even with some new mills and things going in East Texas with cross-laminated timber.
Yeah,
so
that's
basically
cool.
using wood to create structures that traditionally you would only see being done with steel. And so, I mean, there's a lot of there are a lot of, and as technology improves and increases, and our knowledge increases, the opportunities continue to increase as well.
Yeah. Really cool stuff. So, you've listened to a few episodes. The question I always hit people with at the end, which sometimes I prepare them for and I usually don't. And it's funny because the more guests I have that have heard, the podcast are like, okay, I was kind of ready. If you had a piece of advice for our listeners, whether that's, it can be whatever you want, but whether that's in getting into nature or planting a tree or the right way to prune a tree, whatever, what do you think that would be?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways that you could go with that. So, but a couple of things. I mean, the first one, and one that I harp on a lot, is right tree, right place.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's a big thing. So if you're planting a tree, or if you're caring for a tree, make sure that tree's in the right place. I mean, you're going to save yourself and that tree a lot of issues down the road if you choose to put it in the right spot, or choose the right tree for that spot to begin with. So, I mean, that's my technical advice. As far as other things, I mean, just get out in nature. I mean, trees are so beneficial. They're so good for our health, our well-being. So just get out there, whether it's just your local park that has a couple trees, and you can go and sit under those or get yourself a hammock and string up or something. Or if you're traveling to New Mexico or Colorado or Central Texas, where I will soon not have to travel to as I'll be living there, just get out there and explore, enjoy what's out there in nature, and just make the most of it.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. And I really appreciate your time. I enjoyed this a lot.
Yeah, this is fun. This is my first podcast.
Well, you did great.
And so if I've learned anything about podcasts, I will probably have my own in about 6 months. Is that kind of how this
Pretty
goes?
much,
You do your first one, and then before long you've got your own, or 2 or 3.
Right.
So
yes.
Anyway, so
they're self-propagating for sure. That's about right. Plug whatever stuff you want to, whether it's the Forest Service, your own personal things, whatever you want to put out there.
So I'll throw a few things out there. We do have within the agency, we have a podcast called Trees Are Key.
Cool.
Paul Johnson does that.
Oh, Paul's great.
He's out of our Austin office. He's great. A lot of topics. I think it's about 130, 140 episodes that they're up to now.
Oh, wow.
They're short 10-minute episodes, give or take. And anyway, great podcast. Just information about trees and the value of trees, the benefits of trees, and things like that. So Trees Are Key. That's a really good one. Of course, Texas A&M Forest Service is great. So if you have tree questions, look us up. That's about all I've got to plug right now. So
that's awesome.
Go trees.
Go trees. Absolutely. Well, thanks for listening. Thanks, John, for coming in, and best of luck in your new thing.
Well, thanks. I will not be a stranger. I'll still be back in Lubbock from time to time. So maybe a few years down the road we can get together again and recap and see where things have been.
That sounds great. Thanks for listening as always, and we will talk to you in a couple of weeks. Y'all, I think it's important that we do not underestimate how important trees and nature are for our health, our well-being, and just our own happiness. So as you go forward, think about that in the ways that you vote, in the ways that you educate, in the ways that you choose to go outside and learn and spend your time. I so appreciate you listening. I really had fun with this episode, and I hope you did too. Thanks again to the Texas Tech Department of Plant and Soil Science for all the constant support and just for letting this whole thing happen. It would not be possible without them. Find us on social media. We're all the places. Search for Planthropology. You'll find the little green background with a little white tree, the word Planthropology. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and go connect with us there. If you want to support the show, hit up patreon.com/Planthropology. A small donation goes a long way to paying for hosting fees and everything else that goes along with producing a podcast. Go join the very fun Facebook group at Planthropology's Cool Plant People. It's really active, lots of cool questions and answers and memes and everything in between. Y'all are the best. Next time, we're talking coffee. So come back in 2 weeks, hear all about everything from plant breeding to GMOs to how to roast a good cup of coffee. Keep being cool, stay safe, and we'll talk to you next time.